What's up, everyone? Nicky Skevich here once again with an episode of Tee to Green brought to you by DailyFantasyWinners. And it is time for the breakdown of the Memorial Tournament, an event that is located in Dublin, Ohio, which is just outside of Columbus, Ohio, right in the heart and center of the state. So let's just jump into some details that you need to know about this tournament. This is Jack Nicklaus's event, which means two things. Number one, it is played at a Jack Nicklaus designed golf course in Muirfield Village. We'll dive into that in just a little bit. But the second thing is, and more to do with some details about the tournament itself as opposed to the course, is this is an invitational. And why is that important? It's similar to last week in that we're going to have about 120 players in this field as opposed to about 140 to 150. So again, like last week, instead of having, we're going to have top 70 plus ties like usual, like we did last week and this weekend, like we normally do on PGA Tour events. But like last week, because we have a smaller field of 120 players as opposed to like the 140 to 150, we are only going to be cutting, about, 50 golfers and change, or actually less than 50 golfers, I should say. It's going to be fewer than that. And so, a lot of weeks, we're usually cutting about 70 to 80 golfers, roughly, give or take. So, in any case, that's basically the main difference as far as why, from a DFS standpoint, and why it's important in terms of getting 6 of 6 guys through the cut. And it's important to know just for if you're watching your lineups and you want to know what are the chances of you cashing or and everything like that. It's a little bit more likely this week that people are going to have 6 of 6 of their guys in their lineups make the cut this week on DraftKings. And then actually on FanDuel, it's 8 of 8 now because FanDuel changed their format. And I'm not going to get too much into this video, but I'll touch on it maybe briefly at the end. But in any case, moving on with details about the tournament. This is one of the strongest fields of the year for a PGA Tour event. So it's basically what I mean by that is it's not major championship quality. It's not WGC quality and not quite the Players' Championship quality, but it is one of the strongest PGA Tour event fields there is. And so just breaking that down a little bit, we're going to get all the top American players and we're going to get all the top international players who are not part of, who are usually don't play on the European tour, who aren't, your European players essentially. The reasoning for this is last week was the BMW PGA Championship, which is one of the biggest events on the European tour. And so what a lot of times is a lot of people a lot of the European players after the Players' Championship a few weeks ago, they'll head on back overseas, or maybe they'll go to the Texas swing briefly and then they'll head overseas. But they'll play in the BMW Championship and kind of use that as their big building block to get ready for the U.S. Open in a couple weeks from now. And so that's why, so a lot of those players are not going to go play in the BMW Championship, fly overseas, and then play on a short week this week, and then have to turn around in a couple weeks from now and then play in the U.S. Open as well. It's a lot of golf, a lot of big fields, and they don't want to wear themselves out before the U.S. Open. And the U.S. Open is often one of the longer, more brutal walks if you get into certain venues, like Chambers Bay was a couple years ago. And Erin Hills this year is definitely one of the biggest, longest courses that maybe professional golf has ever seen. There were rumors, I won't get too much of the U.S. Open here, but there were rumors that the course could be up to 8,000 yards. I don't know if that's going to be actually what happens, but needless to say, it's a behemoth. So their players aren't going to be trying to wear themselves out too much going into that. So anyways, that's why we got a very strong field of a lot of the non-European international players and American players, but a lot of the Europeans don't make it in this field or decide not to play in it. So let's see here. Yeah, that's pretty much it actually on details for the tournament. So let's just move on into the details about the golf course itself. Like I said, the Nicklaus course at Muirfield Village in Dublin. It's a par 72 tipping out at 7,392 yards. It's a pretty normal length for a par 72, maybe a little bit on the longer side, but the way the course sets up with the elevation changes and everything, and Jack usually does a really good job with his golf courses and the way he designs them of longer and shorter holes on the different pars. It's not really a course that's built like as a huge strength to longer hitters or a huge strength to shorter hitters, so just don't worry about it, the length aspect. Bringing in the Eagles' perspective, 4 par 5s, holes 5, 7, 11, and 15. Actually, let's start with 15. 15 is 529. That's going to give up the most eagles. Probably, it depends on the year. Some years we only see 10 to 15. Some years we see as many as like 20 to 25. So 15 will give up eagles to golfers of all distances. 5 and 7, even though 5 is 527 and 7 is 563, even though they're slightly different distances, we'll see about the same number of eagles made on those holes each year. But those will also actually be made by players of pretty much all distances as well. They'll make eagles on this hole. The only hole that really you're going to only see more longer hitters or decent length hitters, whatever you want to call it, make eagle is number 11 at 567. The main difference, if you want just the short version of it, is there's a creek that basically winds through and around into the side of the par 5, playing down the whole hole. And so it's just more of a risk-reward par 5, and so a lot of the shorter hitters will sometimes, they'll just lay up, and it's just more risky even hitting driver off that tee to begin with, just trying to hit that fairway. And so you'll just see a lot more different strategies come into play on that hole. But overall, we see usually about 40 to 50 eagles here every year for the entire tournament. And we'll see about, like 45 to 50% of the eagles will come on hole 15 alone. We'll see about 30 to 40% coming on holes 5 and 7 combined. And then we'll only see about 5 to 10% or so on hole 11. So it's just needless to say, like at least 90% of the eagles are coming from the holes that can give up eagles to anybody of any driving distance, essentially. And to kind of support this, if you go back and take a look at who made the eagles over the last couple of years, Webb Simpson made the most eagles last year with 3, and then back in 2015, Jason Duffner, who's one of the shortest hitters on the PGA Tour, made 4 eagles and led the field. So again, I know that's technically small sample and everything like that, but trust me, you go back and look at all the eagles that everybody's made over the last several years. Those are the two just most obvious examples I can give to make the point. So, okay, anyway, so you don't worry about driving distance from the par 5's perspective at all, anything like that. Details about the golf course, though, outside of that. So like I said, it's a Jack Nicklaus design, and I'm pretty sure I probably mentioned this in past videos, but I'm a huge fan of Jack Nicklaus design courses just because, well, I'm also a little bit biased toward him because I was fortunate in my family, or my folks, we belong to a golf course called Portachima on Lake of the Ozarks. It's one of the nicest golf courses or golf clubs in Missouri, and so I got to grow up playing on that quite a bit. I got to play a couple other Nicklaus courses along the way growing up, and just I was always kind of a big fan of them. They're all very nice, but I like the designs of them just because. And some of these reasons why I like them definitely come into play here on Muirfield Village. One of the things I really like about it is the fairways. They're not too narrow and they're not too wide either. And it basically, what I mean by that is, if you hit a good drive, you're going to get rewarded. Very rarely on Nicklaus courses are you going to hit. Sometimes you play on golf courses that have narrow fairways and they're really severely sloped, and you'll hit a really good drive, and you just get a horrible bounce on a side hill, and then you just get a nasty lie in the rough. That's not the way Nicklaus courses are designed like that. But they are designed in a sense that if you hit it offline and you're in the rough, and you go way offline, you could be in some big trouble as well. So that's kind of also that plays into the role here of why it's not really like a bomber's paradise, because accuracy does matter a little bit, but also at the same time, it's not like a Florida golf course where you have like really narrow fairways maybe, and the water just right off the fairway on a lot of them. It's kind of a balance, if you will. So. I kind of like that. And a lot of his holes he just gives a wide variety of holes, a lot of dogleg lefts, a lot of dogleg rights, straightforward holes, shorter holes, longer holes of par 4s and par 5s and par 3s, really. So he has a wide variety. It lets you use all the clubs in the bag. That's probably the main overall thing, and that definitely plays here at Muirfield Village. The last thing that comes into play on Nicklaus courses, and maybe this is a little bit more for more experienced golfers that they like this, but there are usually a fair amount of forced carries over water, or even if it's not water, it'll be just up slopes with bunkers or thick rough right before the green, and it's just, you can't bump and run a lot of shots, essentially, or you can't bounce shots onto a putting surface at this course. It basically puts a premium on when I say accuracy, on approach shots, accuracy of approach shots, and striking the golf ball well. So I like that aspect as well. I think it's good when good iron shots are really rewarded, and you don't a lot of times here you don't see bad iron shots get lucky and be rewarded well. So I think that's a good thing as well. So in any case, I use this as a building block to get into the strategy, which is what you guys probably mostly care about. So the strategy angle, strokes gained tee to green, easily the number one thing that shows up here. That's because, like I said, if you get way offline off the tee, you could be in big trouble. It could be in the woods, it could be in the water. Several of those things come into play. But it's also strokes gained, of course, off the tee. Length plays a big role into that. And length is, length's just generally speaking better if you're not considering accuracy. But length does come into play here just a little bit off the tee because of the fairways aren't super narrow and everything like that. So you get a kind of a balance here. That's why strokes gained off the tee. It's good drivers of the golf ball, essentially. It's good ball striking. And then also for the strokes gained approaching angle, strokes gained approaching the green also definitely shows up here. Because, like I mentioned, the forced carries, good iron shots matter here. And so strokes gained a tee to green, which is, off the tee and approaching the green, both of those play a role into that. So strokes gained tee to green shows up the most. If you want to break down strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approaching the green, because those are the two main components of strokes gained tee to green, I would give a slight lean to strokes gained approaching the green. It's very minor, so if you want to get super specific with like a model or a formula you're working with, you can do that. But really, it's about 50-50 on strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained approaching the green. Those are just the two most important aspects. And these are also some greens here that are pretty severely sloped and a lot of times back to front. As well, and so it's just another reason why strokes gained approaching the green is important in keeping the ball below the hole and at the right spots. Not Augusta National-esque, but it is important nevertheless. And so there's a lot of variance with the putting here because they are severely sloped. So that's why the strokes gained putting doesn't show up as much. But just to kind of connect all this, also, if I didn't make this clearly enough, this is why I also say like the driving distance doesn't really show up here a ton. It's more just the strokes gained off the tee and the strokes gained approaching the green, because you can get some shorter hitters who are just really good iron players do well here because strokes gained approaching the green is really rewarded. But you can sometimes have longer hitters who are just kind of like decent or middle of the road approach game guys. But they're having enough time but they're hitting it straight enough with their driver and hitting it long enough that, they're having wedges in their hands or short irons enough of the time that it just makes the golf course play easier for them. So that's just kind of why you get a nice balance here, I think, of longer hitters and shorter hitters who usually do well here. And the Eagles' perspective doesn't really show up strongly for longer hitters either. So hopefully that all makes sense. And the last thing that shows up statistically is just birdie or better percentage. That's pretty standard for people playing daily fantasy, but it particularly shows up here, I think, this week. And the last thing on the strategy angle, and I don't really have much here for this, and that is the lineup building strategy angle portion. I don't really have much here just because there are, at least on DraftKings and really FanDuel for that matter too, starting from DJ at the top, going all the way to 6,500 on DraftKings and going down to probably about the mid 5K range on FanDuel or so. There are a lot of really good options, I think, or the people that you should be considering to roster. Definitely in GPPs. Cash is, I don't know about cash formats, but cash formats may be a little bit higher up. But nevertheless, I think there's just good options everywhere. There's good odds per dollar plays everywhere. Obviously, the cash ownerships will be a little bit inflated for some of the lower price players. But for the most part, I think there's just a lot of good options for a lot of different reasons, whether it's good ball strikers, longer hitters, good approach game guys, just good odds per dollar plays. There's just a lot of good options, and it's kind of that simple. And so I think ownership's really going to be spread out, except for the couple guys maybe that are the lower price guys that just really stand out in that odds per dollar range. So I'll dive into that a little bit more Tuesday night and Wednesday. I'm recording this on a Tuesday afternoon, so I'll dive into that a little bit more Tuesday night and Wednesday for you guys in the forum, and we'll take a look at it. So, anyways, that is it for the strategy angle. Weather and picks. Weather, again, Tuesday afternoon, it's far out, but I don't think there's going to be any weather concerns. Thursday is supposed to be perfectly fine. Friday should be fine. It is supposed to start raining later in the day on Friday. It's not supposed to be much, but it is going to be a little bit. And it is supposed to rain quite a bit Saturday and even rain Sunday. And the winds actually even pick up a little bit on Saturday and Sunday. So the weekend element we're not going to worry about. It's only the weekday portion, and that should be fine. But in the event, because this is Tuesday afternoon and weather can change, if for whatever reason the weather patterns speed up and that rain comes in earlier on Tuesday, and maybe there's a stoppage in play, and the Thursday morning, Friday afternoon wave gets bumped into Saturday, then it gets weird because you could have some weird delays, some weird tee times. You could have the winds start to pick up on Saturday, and it just gets weird. And so, I just say there is a slight chance that Thursday afternoon, Friday morning could be better, but I think it's very minimal. And I'm only just saying this. Double check Wednesday night. We'll take a look at it, but I really think we're not going to have any tee time advantage here either way. So that's probably what's going to end up happening. Okay, on to the picks. We have 5 guys that's $10,000 and above on DraftKings. We have Dustin Johnson at the top at $12K, Jon Rahm at $11.1K, And then we have Jordan Spieth at 11K, and then followed by Jason Day and Hideki rounding out the bottom of the 10K range. So I think all 5 guys are obviously in play in GPPs. I think they're all very much capable of winning this tournament. I probably would not use Jordan Spieth or I probably wouldn't use Jordan Spieth in cash, and he's probably my. I think all 5 are definitely rosterable in GPPs, and again, I'm going to be splitting hairs here with all 5 of these guys to make that clear. I think Jordan Spieth's my least favorite of the 5 guys because he just nearly won the Colonial Tournament, missed by 1. That's a tournament that he usually does play very well at, and it's a course that's a little bit more suited for him. Not to say that this is a bad fit for him, but this is a much stronger field, and I'm still not sure about his driving the golf ball right now and how the strokes gained off the tee element plays in here. So again, Jordan could play very well here and win this thing, but of the 5 guys, he is probably the most I'm a little iffy on just as far as paying top dollars for. So Spieth would be my last guy. My number 4 guy is Jason Day. The only reason is the strokes gained approaching the green. His putting, you're seeing Jason Day obviously start to play a little bit better as far as the results go, except for the last couple holes, like at Sawgrass. But the strokes gained putting, like he's been one of the highest guys on our putting tool for most of the year. He's finally starting to putt better, which is not a surprise since it was expected positive putting regression, but the strokes gained approaching the green is still a little bit of a minor concern to me, and so that's just why I put him 4th. Again, but like I said, he's got the length, and if he clicks, look out. Then you're getting great value, and you'll probably still get great value here as far as the ownership goes with Jason Day and GPPs. He'll probably still only be like. I'll probably be like 15%, I would say at the most, maybe like 10 to 15%, which is great for Jason Day at 10.3. I think that's phenomenal value. The number 3 guy, I would say, this is really 3A and 3B, or 2A and 2B, however you want to call it, is Jon Rahm and Hideki. I think Rahm is slightly better than Hideki to win the golf tournament if I'm not considering price. But considering that Jon Rahm is $1,100 more, I would say I would recommend using Hideki maybe a little bit more, just because this is more of a strokes gained tee to green course, and Hideki is very strong tee to green. Obviously, Jon Rahm is too, and Jon Rahm's a little bit of a better putter than Hideki, just because. So that's why Jon Rahm should be considered a little bit better than Hideki to win the golf tournament. But just to say, because putting doesn't really show up that much, and that Rahm's $1,100 more, I have no problem putting in a good amount of ownership to Hideki. I think Hideki will get a decent amount of ownership too, probably 20%, I'm guessing, but that's perfectly fine for somebody at that price point. So consider Jon Rahm and Hideki 2A and 2B. Rahm slightly better probably to win the tournament. Hideki a little bit better in the value in my estimation, and so maybe Hideki in cash and Rahm in GPPs, or you could use both in cash and both in GPPs. I think it's all on the table. And then number 1 is Dustin Johnson, just certainly to win the golf tournament. I don't think it's by like a mile like some people make it out to be. If we're going to a Bombers course, like spoiler alert, Aaron Hills, Dustin Johnson. Aaron Hills is going to be extremely long. Like Dustin Johnson, I'll be saying Dustin Johnson, yeah, play him. But for courses that don't have an exact premium on length, it's like, yes, Dustin's still the best player, but I just don't think it's that big of a difference between Dustin and like the rest of the guys. But if you're getting on a course where length really is a big deal, then I think the gap that people are suggesting about Dustin is pretty much warranted. So again, like I said, DJ the best to win this week. I don't think it's by a huge landslide, and not quite as much as the odds are suggesting at the sports books. Like I think he's, was it 5 or 6 to 1 to win the tournament? I mean, yeah, I guess that might be that's a fair price, but I wouldn't bet on that. I just, not for this tournament. Dustin should be more like 8 to 1 or 9 to 1. Kind of, that's probably where I would say Dustin's odds should be for this week. And then for the cash element of it, because there is enough cheaper plays, you probably could use Dustin in cash, but I just don't think there's a point in using Dustin in cash. Like, I think, like I said, Dustin, Rahm, and Hideki are all extremely, extremely likely to make the cut here. And so I just save yourself the money a little bit. Save yourself at least the $900 to Rahm, or save yourself the $2K to Hideki. Just and find yourself like an extra $9K player as opposed to a $7K player. However you want to build it. Just do that for cash. I'd probably still do that, but I guess if you really wanted to do Dustin, you're a huge Dustin fan, you could do it in cash, but obviously use Dustin in GPPs. That's a no-brainer. So, and then on to 9K range. if I'm going to cheat slightly and go just below the 10K range and not call it the 9K range, Ricky Fowler at 8,900, he's going to get a lot of love this week. I think, just even though he's missed his last 3 cuts here, actually, at Muirfield, but I still think he's going to get a decent amount of ownership, and I actually like Ricky a lot this week. There's just nothing to not like about him. I just don't care about the course history. And even if you look at 2013 when he finished T37, if people remember, Fowler actually played with Tiger in the I don't think it would have been the final group. It would have been like the second to last group, I think, of the day back in 2013 when Tiger won Muirfield in 2013. And Fowler just played horribly on Sunday, but obviously Fowler's a much player now than he was back then. And Fowler's actually played some pretty good rounds here. He's had a couple bad tournaments here, I guess, as of late. But Fowler's playing really well this year. I like him a lot. No worries there. And then Adam Scott's also very good as well. They're both the 2 best odds per dollar plays, of course, as well, that are below 10K. Ricky Fowler and Adam Scott are, and I just agree with it, and I think they're both phenomenal tee to green game guys, and so that's pretty much that simple. There's really nothing too fancy about it, and so anyways, that's it for this video. Oh, actually, I just want to mention one thing. So for FanDuel, obviously FanDuel changed its format. They are no longer doing rounds 1 and 2 versus rounds 3 and 4, which obviously changes some things from an advice standpoint. So that's obviously it's different scoring and all that too, but it seems like, if I'm not mistaken, just looking at it, the only main difference between the old FanDuel version and the new FanDuel version now is that they just took out the rounds 1 and 2 versus rounds 3 and 4 element, which some people like, some people don't like. I get both sides of it at this point. And so I will be talking more about FanDuel stuff on here in the future. It's just they were making changes, and this is kind of what I was afraid of on starting to even talk about FanDuel at first. And so, but I will start bringing FanDuel more into the equation. I will also we'll start bringing in some new stuff on DailyFantasyWinners.com for FanDuel stuff in terms of like FanDuel odds per dollar, comparing the DraftKings and the FanDuel prices, and like where you're going to find like, oh, this golfer's way cheaper on like this site versus that site if you're somebody who plays on both FanDuel and DraftKings. And so, and even if I can't quite get everything up and running on the tools portion of it, because I'm not the super tech guy here with getting stuff to work here, I will at least post some of this stuff in the forum for you each week until we get that up and running, and so that can at least help you guys out on a temporary basis until we get more of the whole tool thing set up. And so, anyways, that's it. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube page, and then I'm at Nikki Skevich on Twitter, and Daily Fantasy Winners is on Twitter at DFantasyWinners. All right, good luck, everybody.